Oh, that's cool. So you can actually live stream from Zoom directly to these platforms as well.
Yeah. So if everything should be correct, then it's going to go live in like 3 seconds from now. Or it's already
Okay,
done.
cool. Awesome. I'll start at mine as well. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Alex. I am here with HiRa Hosèn. She used to be an ascension catalyst, now is a source portal. And I was like, all right, you're going to have to explain this because that sounds so cool. And so HiRa, thanks for hanging out with me today. And, I'm super excited for this conversation. So actually a funny story before you go into it. When I first had my spiritual awakening, this was back in 2013, I got on YouTube and tried to look for as much information as I could find. And HiRa's channel is one of the first ones that popped up. And it's so cool to be here, almost 10 years later, having this conversation. And yeah, so, it's just, and then I just got done, doing a workshop with her, which was about how to live in your heart and why. So I felt like what better title and what better topic to talk about than that, because I feel like that is one of the most important things in the world right now. And it may not seem that way because it's so simple, but that's where I think it's fascinating and I want to get into. So yeah, HiRa, you want to go into a little bit about your background, but also explain source portal, ascension catalyst, everything like that?
Yes. Okay, super cool. So what was the first question? Sorry, I heard source portal. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's funny because I'm remaking my website and everything, and then every time I have to change my description, like what are you doing in life, right? So so first, for quite a long time, it's been Ascension Catalyst. Like I really loved it and I really resonated with it because I really felt that I was here to catalyze ascension, but also awakening, and just catalyze the human collective, like on the level of awakening or evolvement or evolution. I guess evolution is not really resonating with me in that sense, but
yeah, and actually, isn't that so cool that was, your mission and you literally helped me do that? Like
good.
that intention was being manifested, and it's made this happen right here.
Yeah. 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 So then I don't know when it happened, but I think about a year or two ago, like something in that area, like I really felt that it's not my job to kind of like catalyze anyone. If I'm just in my source energy and someone is activated or catalyzed in their awakening, then that's awesome. But it's not really up to me anymore. But it really changed because when I was born, I mean, this is like 47 years ago. I was one of those, I call myself more a diamond child, but I was one of the indigos, the indigo kids that came in. I think the first lineage of indigo kids came in 50, 60 years ago, something like that, maybe even 70, but those were really, really only a small group. So we came in as like the door breakers, the ones that hammer on the door and just really like open all the doors. So I've been doing that for so long that also in my own personal development, I just started to really feel that shift of like, it's done, like there's so many, when you look at the new generations, I don't know your age, by the way, what
32.
is it? 32. Okay, so then, we have 15 years of difference. So that is already a different generation. So if you look at my daughter who's 13, that's again like a whole different generation. I don't know if it's 15 years or 20 years for a generation or 10 years, but all these generations are having like something that they come in with. And so if I look at what I came in with, it was definitely like, yeah, kind of hammering any established, and call it organizational structure, whether it's governmental, religious, or whatever, like the structure is there. I was there to just kind of go into it and then just from the inside, just kind of break open all the doors. So it's more accessible for everyone. So you come in with kind of like, you got the knives, you got the this, you got the that, like the warrior type, you know? And then actually this whole thing of ascension is very much linked to our planet, to Mother Earth. So when she started to really move into that higher level of frequency, you could say, of ascension or awakening, or really going into a new state of being, then I felt also myself, of course, changing. Like, okay, then if it's already done, then I can also kind of relax more or go more to the back seat and just let the young people just take over and just go for it. So the thing is that we were kind of scheduled to wake up like already 100 years ago, like seriously, like already 100 years ago. So we're very slow. We got delayed, and I mean, look around in the world, you know why. But okay, we got delayed, and so our ascension process has been delayed in so many levels, also because we kind of sink into the reality as we see it, that we kind of also forgot. And many of us just kind of got in and forgot. So it's not easy to be born and to have all those memories ready, and that you're just going for it and you start manifesting and I don't know, doing all kinds of things. So it's normal, but and then, okay, we were getting to the source portal. Then at a certain point, like about 2 years ago, also with all the changes in the world and everything, I just felt this exhaustion, like literally like an exhaustion. I just felt like, you know, like I've been fighting, I've been, you know, breaking open the doors, I've been opening all these portals. Now for me, it's time to be, you know, it's like, and there's a huge difference in between trying to make something work or happen for the whole world and yourself, of course, and then getting into an energy where you're just like, I'm just going to be. And my frequency of being is actually the one that helps the most. So for example, when you look also at what's happening in the world now, the Ukraine now, like there's always things happening in the world, like on really intense levels, like a lot of suffering, a lot of, you know, a lot of things are happening. And also this question, like before I lived for 10 years in the Zen temple. So my vow is of a bodhisattva that says, I help everyone and I keep helping everyone until I reach enlightenment. So even that change, that sense of being the warrior, the sense of being the bodhisattva, that sense of being, everything has been changing into more like aligned structure or inner architectural structure towards my heart, towards peace from my heart, saying, okay, but if the frequency that I am, my source portal, my source energy, just can come out and start to radiate that frequency, then I am doing enough. Then I am doing already all that I can, because I'm just basically like a source portal, like not only bringing out that frequency, but also allowing source at the highest frequency that I can handle in my body to just kind of bring out that love or that peace or all these beautiful qualities that come from our hearts. So I don't know if that made any sense, because there was a lot coming through while I was trying to answer your question, but this is, you know, this is as much as what came out. So
Yeah, it does actually. And it reminds me of when I first stumbled upon your YouTube. I mean, I can't even remember anything that you were really saying, but I do remember your energy and how you were just putting that out there and just being yourself. And I think, like, you know, with the topics of the type of videos you were making was important, but really it was even more so like the passion that you were putting out there and you just being yourself. So even though you hadn't even identified with that at that time, you were already doing that. And me, as somebody who, you know, was making YouTube content as well, like, I just felt so inspired by that, you know, because also, I mean, this just goes into more of my background, but, you know, like I had a YouTube channel, and this was, you know, over 10 years ago. And I was like making comedy music and all, but after that awakening, I was very interested in all these things that, you know, you were talking about, and all these, like, I guess it was just more of that remembering that awakening. And I wanted to be, you know, like a part of me wanted to be making the content, you know, the type of videos that I am now. But of course, it took me, you know, 10 years to get here and to get to the point where I could. But to see you there kind of already doing it, you know, was, and just being was that inspiration. And I think that's like a lot of what you're talking about, where it's like, it's not about an effort, because an effort is kind of going, you know, out, it's almost like still exerting energy, but there's, I guess there's an energy to exerting it, but also to just being as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's super interesting because I saw this beautiful image of one friend of mine posted it on Facebook, I think. It's just like two circles, and one says discipline and the other says surrender. And then they come together, you know, in the Vaisika Pisces symbol, and in the middle you have flow. So that's something that you're talking about, effortless. Okay, so if I want to be in that effortless flow in the middle, a lot of people go into the surrender mode, but there's also some sort of discipline, you could say. There's some sort of, if I wouldn't have done all the things I've been doing, and you know, for example, 10 years in a Zen temple or working with different traditions and different teachings, then I wouldn't be able to be in that effortless flow. So, and still, it's not like I'm all day, all the time in an effortless flow. It's like, it's obvious that there's resistance. Okay, something from my body, something from my emotions, something from my mind. Okay, clear it out. And then the flow comes again. So it's very interesting how this effortless, so you do make an effort in some sort of sense, but without a sense of control. You know, and I'm not saying this as some kind of professional, because you know, definitely not completely effortless all the time, but there seems to be something about this beautiful effortless state that life is, and just kind of surrendering in that effortless state. But you do need to have some sort of discipline, or whatever you want to call it. You have to have that focus, right? If you're not focusing constantly, where am I? What am I doing? From what place am I coming from? Because how to live from your heart and why? If you're not aware, then you're going to be in your mind all day. So you need to have some sort of effortless awareness or effortful awareness. At that point, it doesn't matter, as long as the awareness is there. And then you just go into that type of, what place am I coming from? You know, like, for example, now, like I can feel that I'm coming from my heart, but there's also like in my belly, there's a bit of tension there. It's like, okay, oh my God, this is my first live on Facebook, and you know, like, why is there not like 1,000 likes already? And you know, so there's some kind of a right. So there's some kind of, so, but if I'm not aware of all those different places in my body, and I'm not aware of what's really happening there, then I'll just, you know, go from my brain and thinking, yeah, this was really cool. This was really cool. Yeah, well, were you really coming from that place, from your heart? Were you really, you know, from that source portal that you are, you know? And so that's why I like to be called source portal, because it's not only what I like to be for others, but that's what I would love to be for myself as well, like continuously, you know, in that sense.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, because it is kind of finding that balance between effort and ease. And I remember when I was like first, you know, well, about 10 years ago, you know, I had really changed over from, you know, living a path that was at the time, you know, more, I would say, like materialistic, to a path that was more heart-centered. And, you know, I was thinking a lot about happiness and being happy, and, you know, and just thinking about, well, how do you be like truly happy? How do you find like that true sense of fulfillment? Because there's a part of you that like, and I think that's the ease, that's the surrender, that like is like, well, I could just, you know, like just relax on, you know, the couch all day, or just go live on a beach somewhere. Like I could just move and just be on the beach and just have that. And I still think that there's still a part of me that's like, I could just, you know, move to Hawaii and just live on a beach and just, you know, I live a great life. But then it's like, but if that's all I'm doing, there's no effort being done. And then it's like, you know, and so it is that balance of like actually doing something. And I think that's where the purpose comes in, right? Is like what your purpose is. Because if you're laying on a beach and that's all you're doing, but if that's what you feel your purpose is, like, hey, that's great. You know, that's a great purpose to have, maybe, because you're going to feel great doing it. But like for me, it's like, I don't know. And, you know, like what you're saying too, it's like when you have that purpose, it's like, it does take effort, you know? And then I think it's also about allowing those, instead of judging those emotions or, you know, judging, being able, and I think that's like what about is important by being in your heart too, because in your head, then you're like, our head is by nature like divisive, because it breaks down these things into smaller pieces that are easier for us to grasp, which serves a purpose, but it also is inherently judgmental, because when you break things down into smaller pieces, you do have to kind of parse things out and be like, okay, well, this is right, or this is, you know, left, or this is, you know, red and blue, you know? And so, yeah. And I just think that's interesting, you know, whereas, you know, when you're coming from your heart, you're in that sense of not being judgmental and, you know, not judging things. And yeah, that's when it gets a lot easier to find that flow.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's allowing, right? That's what you said. And it's about not being judgmental, but this whole kind of, I've been, for example, like a lot of my practices have been like not like how, let's say, not trying not to be judgmental, but then I was still judgmental about being judgmental. So that there's always like some sort of a, how to say, like you're setting a goal or something, or you know you want to move into towards that frequency. Let's call it non-judgmental, or let's call it living from the heart. So you know that there is the frequency there. You know you have it in you, but how can you embody that all the time and also be compassionate with yourself when you're not embodying it? You know, in that sense. So it's about like, can I embody that non-judgmental state? Can I be it? Can I, you know, and that even when I have a judgment, to just be aware of it with compassion and not like get into a circle of like, oh my God, I'm judging right now. And then going into a vicious circle because you're judging that you're judging, you know? So it's like how can you, and that's what you said the word allowing, which is beautiful, which a lot of these ancient traditions are also, you know, a lot talking about. The Buddhist, the Taoist, they all speak about this, you know, allowing or flow, or, you know, all these words where we're just kind of being or resting in that heart space. So for sure, the effort would be to bring yourself continuously from here to here, from here to here, continuously from here to, because a lot of people, without knowing, we're very much in the brain. It's like the Buddhists say, I think 84,000 thoughts a day or something like that, right? So how can you kind of start living from experiencing things directly, and not from trying to or understanding life as a projection, but just really like going back into that flow where we're talking about like allowing it, and then from that heart space. So in that sense, it's all the time like that. For me, it's been 10 years of practice of that. It's like, and that's what we have been doing in the workshops also. It's like, how do I bring my center of awareness all the way down into my physical heart and then live from there?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when we allow, you know, it's like you said, you had that feeling in your gut that's like, you know, but it's interesting because when you allow it, you kind of allow it to be. And so it's like that feeling in your gut is serving a purpose, because it's also like helping you, you know, have the motivation and the desire to have a good stream and to basically be able to connect with people and to connect with this message and everything. So it's like, and that's where, yeah, it's like the non-judgmental as well, because it's like, oh, it's there to teach me something. And it's interesting. And that's kind of the way I've been looking at a lot of these things too, is like, everything is a teacher, you know, like if you could kind of look at it that like, and you don't have to keep going back to class, you know, sometimes you could just get the lesson once and you know, you could know it. But if like, you kind of look at it like, oh, okay, what's this there to teach me, you know? But you're exactly right that I feel like a lot of where that ends up going is like teaching you to come from compassion and to love it and to just be with it, you know? And I think part of a lot of why, you know, we have so much disease in this world is because we're resisting, you know, we're avoiding, we're trying to, you know, repress these painful and, you know, possibly traumatic experiences or thoughts that we have, but really it's the feelings, because we don't want to feel those certain ways, and then they those diseases kind of manifest in our organs and things like that if we don't deal with them and let them go. But it's interesting because it's like allowing is the exact opposite of resisting. So it's like they say take the path of least resistance, but you could also look at that as like go towards the path of the most allowing.
Yeah, true. And also, it's funny because I was doing my yoga this morning, and some things came through, and I had a conversation with someone, and really, like the last days, it was really, the words were angry determination. Angry determination. How can you shift that type of anger into angry determination? So that's exactly what you're saying, that gut feeling, that the feelings from the belly, like obviously we feel different when we're present in the body here. We feel different, right? Like we feel like light and expansive and open and everything. And the same when we are in our hearts, there's much more peace and there's much more acceptance of the moment as it is. The being, in that moment, and just kind of surrendering to it. And then you go to the belly, as the Taoists also say, it's like that's where the fire is, that's where the intense emotions and also the anger and the desire and all these things. So for sure, when I started my work, I was very much focused here. I was very much like all the time, like love and light and love and light and love and light. But I was forgetting that, if I'm not aligned with all of my body, including the soles of my feet, and including the whole aura that I carry with me, then I can still wanting to come out with a message living from the heart, but I won't be able to do it because my hidden emotions or my patterns that I'm not aware of, because that's what happens. Like we keep stuffing them away so much, repressing our emotions so much that, as you're saying, they will get into our organs and we will get sick. So and you had that in your life, like you had that happening in your life, so very well, like, okay, I need to somehow, so the angry determination is really the theme that I wrote down today. Okay, today it's like whatever I'm like a little frustrated about or angry, or this doesn't work like I want, or whatever's, instead of like seeing that as something difficult or challenging, I just like, okay, that's excellent, that's gonna and the determination for me is always the same. It's liberation, full liberation. Like not even like so much like I used to really strive for enlightenment, and I'm starting to understand more and more that that striving for enlightenment didn't bring me very far. It just actually was more like a distraction than the real thing. Because the real thing doesn't need anything. It's already, it is already, that enlightenment is already, that we can just tap into. That's what we're talking about. That flow state is all the time there. It is. The only one who doesn't know it's there is us. So in that sense, like it really, but it's interesting, how you have to go through all these different phases, because if I wouldn't have strived for enlightenment, I wouldn't be where I'm now. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying like, okay, there is a way to balance all these different parts. And for sure, the emotions can definitely serve us in the sense of really serving us. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And I think what's so fascinating about your background specifically that I want to get into is like, it's just how much of a depth there was, and how many different paths you got on to lead you to where you are today. And it's interesting because they say all roads lead to Rome, all paths lead to one. And it's kind of interesting at the same time where it's like all of the paths lead to one, as in our heart, because sometimes it's like our minds like want it to be more difficult. It's like, no, it couldn't be that easy. There's no way. It's got to, but it is, it seems like, right? So yeah, like, so, and you brought up a couple times you lived in a Zen temple for 10 years. Yeah. But so I'd love to know a little bit more about your childhood. Like, were you always this like open and connected? Was it a process for you of like learning about this, or like, was there ever a time when you weren't connected, or were you just from the moment you were born, you were right tapped in?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of blocked it out for a while, for a long time, actually, maybe 40 years or something, but I was born awake. So I had special gifts and everything when I was young. A lot of things that I am not able to do now anymore. That I don't want to put names on it or something, because people will just be like, ding, 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 okay, that's it. But yeah, and then when I was around 7, I really felt like I was very much connected through my central channel. I was connected to, you could call it, other worlds. I even had a place that I called home. You know, it was like it was looking like a disc, like a spaceship, and it was white, and I could just, by imagining or wanting or wishing anything or needing anything, it would just kind of come out of the walls of that space. So when I would fall asleep, I would literally transfer myself into that disc or home. It was my home. And when I was around 6 or 7, I really remember it very well. It started to close. So my crown started to close. The whole connection there started to close. And I remember.
Really quick. Yeah. Or yeah, keep going. I was going to ask why. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, that's good. So I think it was because of the agreement that I made to be human. So when you make an agreement to be human, you are bound to different rules of engagement or rules of agreement. So I can't go live like I'm doing now on Facebook and then just have something appear in my hand. Like, definitely I can't do that right now. I would love to, but I can't even do it because I got so used to those rules of engagement that I won't do it. But there's rules of engagement in the sense of, we as humans have decided that I can't do that because it would shock your reality so much that it would just break something. So that you can't do. So at a certain level, and also I felt, because at a certain point I could still feel that connection, and I was crying about it, and I felt completely abandoned, you know, by my real family. I was like, that's my real family. This family down here is just cuckoo. Like, what am I doing in this place? You know, just bring me back up, Scotty. You know, it's like, really just, I don't want to. So that's also a reason, is that I would have never grounded as a human being if I wouldn't, if they wouldn't have severed really. I think it was just natural. It's just maybe actually that's what's coming now, is that if I would have been in a temple or something and I would have had practices when I was around 7, or knowing that my practices would come when I was around 10, and this central channel would have been, and I would have been, you know, breathing through it and stuff, there would be no severing, and I would still be in that connection completely, probably. But I wasn't doing any practices, and for them, they have to disconnect, because else I will not want to be here. I will not want to stay here. It's too intense. It's too, and this you can ask, like any type of light being, they are so comfortable where they are at, and life is just so blissful that when they have to take human form, a lot of them wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. A lot of them would be like burnt out, like the body would instantly burn because of the low frequencies that we're living on. So in that sense, there needs to be some sort of transition. And in that transition of like going from that dimension into this one, yeah, it has to be severed. It has to be somehow cut, unless you're super clear. I mean, you're like super awake and you're like, no, I don't want this to disconnect. Just give me the practices. I'll download them and I'll just keep on breathing. And you start breathing and you do it by yourself. Okay, yeah, I wasn't at that level, unfortunately. So I had to go through a lot of suffering, basically, of losing my purpose, losing my true identity or my true nature, and losing of that. But the interesting part is that once now I'm starting to refine it, I'm starting to reconnect to it. It's like as if I'm helping, or maybe it is true, maybe it's just my own impression, but it's like as if, because I'm going through that process again and again, it's not the first lifetime, but because I'm going through that process, all the things I'm releasing, I'm not only releasing for me, but I'm really doing it for the whole of the collective, because I know what I'm speaking about. I went through it myself. You know.
Wow. Well, hey, thank you for doing that for all of us. That's amazing. And
yeah, we're all doing that, huh? But yes,
oh,
wait. I'm learning how to receive. So No,
yeah.
no,
Exactly.
really, I
Yeah.
mean, really,
We appreciate it. We
this
appreciate
challenge.
it.
I mean, it's literally. I'm with a group of 45 Arabic women, amazing, and it's about abundance and the goddess and everything. So I'm learning how to receive. So you just gave me a compliment, and I was going to shove it over and say everybody does that, but I'm just going to take a moment and just receive. Thank you.
And thank you for letting us know that we all do it too, so that's even great. You can receive it, and then you can also enlighten us, and like, oh, well, everyone that's watching this is like, oh, if we feel a little better now, we're helping, like everyone here watching this is doing it too. But you absolutely, are helping to, just like what you did right here, like transform, right? And like help us understand that. And that's so important, just bringing these things into our awareness. And what I thought was really interesting about what you said, I had like a light bulb moment, because you mentioned that like that connection was severed at the age of 7, like, or 6 or 7. But isn't that interesting that around the ages of 6 or 7 is also when we actually start like remembering things? Like a lot of times, like most of us can't really remember what happened in our lives before the ages of 6 or 7. And it really just clicked like, oh, that's because from the ages of like, when you're born to like 6 or 7, like you have that strong source connection. And so it's the same way as like when we go into a dream, like it's, we can't really remember where we go in our dreams unless it's like, maybe we can remember some of them, right? But and all of that, it's like, we don't know, we can't remember. So it makes perfect sense. Oh, that's why I can't remember it much when I was like, 4 or 3 or whatever, because I was in the other realms in a way,
Yeah.
and that's just amazing. And that's why it is so important, like on how you're raised, because those first 6 years, like, yes, you are connected. You have like one foot in both worlds. You have one foot in, the ether, but you also have one foot here on earth. And like, the way that you're raised with your family and the things like, and they say like by the time we're 6 or 7, like I forget the stat, but it's like we've been told no. Most of us have been told no this many times. It's become so ingrained. And that's why it's like, it's a lot of, as time goes on, like kind of, I feel like it's a lot of deconditioning as to what we experience in those first 6 or 7 years that we might not even fully remember, but that still impacted us in a way.
Yeah. And also what's very interesting, I don't remember who said it. I'm really kind of bad with names, but it's one of those kind of famous person that is teaching about those things. But he said that until we are 6 or 7, we're still mostly in theta waves. So mostly our brain is in theta waves. So we're in a kind of like almost like in between light and how you say that, like not light and dark, but in between this reality and dream state. So in that sense, a child is still dreaming, like really like the reality is dreaming the reality, and it's seeing reality as it is, as a dream. But once we start to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, these theta waves start to change into normal beta waves. So in that sense, it's interesting that we're talking about that, because that's what came through when I was listening to you. It's like, yeah, but it's also the theta waves, right? It's also what we teach in my workshops is like, or in our workshops is like the theta waves, the alpha waves, the beta waves, the gamma waves, all these waves that are so important because they give the perception of reality. So they change when you change your theta or beta or gamma waves, or actually even alpha waves, which is, the bliss, then you also change your perception. So I think that's also what happened, is that this closes because there was like not enough theta waves anymore. I was just like really starting to ground, which was necessary for all the process that came. But I think also if I would have known what was coming, I would have never done it. I think if I seriously, I think if it was like, okay, that's it, like I think, yeah, if I would have known how difficult it would become, I would have never done it. But this is always what they say. They say always that that we're always first in line. We're all volunteering. Like, who wants to go to the planet Earth? And everybody's like, me. And then once you're here, We're like, wow. You told me it would be intense and heavy, but I didn't know it was like that heavy.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great, topic in and of itself. I mean, because it's a paradox in a way. It's like, well, if we already are, we're already, we're just being, and, we have all of this already. Like, why are we, like, what did we come here to learn? What,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it all about soul evolution? Because there's also something to be said about, there's soul evolution, but then there's like, we are complete the way we are, we
Yeah.
are already all these things now. So then it's like, but then why are we experiencing it?
Yeah.
That's the paradox, right?
Why are we experiencing it? That's exactly it. Yeah, I love how you're using all it's amazing. Like, I love your frequency. I hope you will be able to receive my compliment.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna take it. Thank you so much. That means a lot, especially coming from you, especially coming from you. I'm
Great.
gonna put that on my wall.
Okay, but first let me finish so you're saying, okay, why are we doing and the experiencing, right? I first, I always believed in karma. It's like, we come here because we are linked with other people and soul, missions and everything. So we need to finish that, and then once we are really fully done with that, we can become enlightened or go to another state. Then that changed, and I was like, well, actually, everybody's just here to have an experience, to have a human body experience, because it's not it's not common. It's like a soul, and then symbiotically linked to a physical body is rare. It's like, in the sense of, like, we think it's totally normal. We think like, oh, well, I'm human and that's normal. But actually, it's very specific. Like, you have to have very specific frequency or soul purpose to actually be able to even be born as a human being. And of course, like, once we get down into the darkest, deepest frequencies, we're like, I mean, even I think it was even yesterday still. Yeah, yesterday I felt this frequency in me, in my belly, and also in the lower chakras, where I was like, I was like, okay, now you can really talk to me. You can really, like, show yourself to me. And that frequency in me said, I hate it here. That frequency said, I hate it here. It's like, why is everything so F-word difficult? Why? Like, I come from a world, I come from a planet, I come from a space where you don't even need to do that. It's like you whatever you wish from your heart is just, like, whatever, it's just, and everything is just flowing, and you're just happy, and everything is easy and everything. And then you come here, and then it's like, you want to move one thing, and then it's like, oh, you need to, like, the whole human collective, you need to move the whole human collective. Oh my God, just move that thing. It's like, it's why? So yesterday, that frequency in me said, that's it. That frequency was like, I hate being here. It's just, everything is so freaking difficult. So in that sense, I don't know why we got there, but in that sense, yes, the experience. So in that sense, a lot of us are here to help. A lot of us are here because we volunteered. A lot of us here are here to raise the frequency of the planet. There's never been so many ascension workers or light workers, or whatever names we give them, crystal children, indigo children, diamond children. There's never been so many teachers, spiritual lineages, everything, we're blasted with it as now. Why is that? Because we all decided to bring that frequency there. But now that the frequency is there already, what are you going to do? Yeah, just, okay, yeah, what are you going to do in that new earth? I'm going to experience it. So there's the shift from being here because you have a purpose into, let's just build a new earth. Experience being on earth in a very high frequency, having high frequency experiences. That's for most of us on the new earth. That's it. Like, there's no more indulgence and no frequency experiences. And that means that you have to understand that everything is a choice. Even if it looks like there are so many victims in our world. And I'm also like, I'm sending out my love and I'm sending out my frequency for everyone to receive, not all the time, but today I am. So then I'm not saying like, or you're bad because you're unconsciously or consciously choosing to have low frequency experiences, or you're addicted to it, or you're indulging in it. But in the new earth, there is no more indulgence in the low frequency experiences. So it really is about experiencing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It makes me think of the quote, "Man is a star bound to a body." And also, it's interesting too, because I was having the thought that what if one of the reasons that we are here is not even necessarily for us, like how we have cells in our body, and those cells like have their own jobs, right? Like, we have liver cells and lung cells and all of that, but it's really to help us like be able to live and be able to experience. I mean, you talk a lot about, helping raise the vibration of the planet and all of this. And a lot of times when we hear that, we think, oh, of the planet, we think of the people in it. But what's interesting to think about, is, are we doing this for the earth itself? Are we helping to raise the vibration of the earth? And we are its cells in a way.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I think so. I think that at a certain point, she will not need us to do that anymore. But because it's that delay that I was talking about. It's like we, as this ascension or this awakening was planned already, not only 100 years ago, but before that already. But it was again, we were so deeply ingrained in those low frequencies that we forgot, we just fell asleep. So, and a lot of us. So at a certain point, definitely the human collective and Gaia, Mother Earth, have sent out a call and said, anybody that can help, we need it big time, because there's definitely violations going on this planet, on the sense of, you could call it basic human rights or just basic rights. And then you can think, how is that possible? Okay, how is it possible that we have this kind of violation of basic human rights while at the same time there is free will? So the only reason and way that it's possible is because, in that sense, it's a bit of a difficult topic, but I will dive into it because we're on a good flow here. Is that it's possible when you understand that people, like for example nowadays, they really have to voluntarily, even though they feel maybe stuck in a certain situation. And maybe they feel they're forced, because it takes a lot of courage to say, okay, that's it. I'm just going to be myself. I want to be free. I want to do this and I want to do that. And I don't want to do that and don't want to do it. So how do I make my choice? Basically, what it comes down to is that as a human collective, we wanted to experience duality. We wanted to experience the dark and the light seeing each other. This is the whole game. Is that the light was able to see the dark and the dark was able to see the light. This is special. Normally the dark is the dark and doesn't even know about the light in that sense. And the light is just light, doesn't know about the dark, is just happy to be light, but they wanted to see each other. So we as a human collective said, we want to have that experience, not only to grow, but also because we want to have that experience. And because when you have that experience, you accelerate in your growth, like something that you cannot imagine. Like we are growing as a humanity, as a human collective. Like before we would learn something in 100 years. Now we learn in 1 minute as a human collective what we used to do 1,000 years ago in 100 years. So we're exponentially like going like that, like we're going straight up. So we wanted to have that experience. So the only way out of the lower frequency experiences is to understand that, and not to have the point out and to blame. You can't go out and be like, this is their fault and it's because of the system and it's because of this and because of that, because then you're giving your power away. You need to stand in your own power and say, okay, I wanted to play this game. I have put these people in power. I have put these people there in place because as a human collective, I wanted to play that game. But now the earth said in 2012, the earth said, Khalas, finished, done with that game. No more of that. I've learned and now I'm moving on. Whoever wants to move on, you're with me. Whoever doesn't, you're going to have to leave the planet, because her frequency is going up, up, up and rising fast, 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 so much that if you're not following the rising up of the planet, you will not be able to stay here anymore. All these dark energies and everything that we have put in place here to have that experience, are not going to be able to survive even, or to thrive. Forget about it. They're not able to follow up. So in that sense, yeah, it's complicated, because there is the free will, and then there is also definitely a violation of basic human rights. And there seems to be a lot of people that are stuck in that middle, that kind of like ground there. But if you're super sincere and you go into your heart space, and you just like the question of this whole interview we're doing, how to live from the heart and why. So let's get to the why, like how to live in the heart. Okay, we can get into that, but why? Because that's where all the answers are. Like not only for our planet, but for the whole universe, and for all the universes that are linked to us. There's like 22 different star galaxies linked to ours that are sending us, like it's called ultralight, that are sending us ultralight at the moment, which is totally new. So it's like what we do on this planet matters, really matters. What you do, what I do, what all of us do matters, because it is influencing everyone, everywhere. So if we make a mess, it's going to be the mess on everywhere. And the ascension that we're going through as a planet Earth is also happening in the sun. It's also happening in the moon. It's also happening in Pluto, Mars, all the Venus, all the stars, and then beyond that. So it's like, it's quite huge, actually, the things that we're talking about. Yeah. So, and I don't know how we got there, but we got there with the experience, I think. The experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, it's really fascinating, and it just still feels like a paradox to me, because it's like on one level we're already there, like our higher selves, like on some level are already there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. It makes me think too about like, there's the idea that we're all like kind of conduits to help, energy get from one state to another. Like the same way we're having this conversation, like a lot of people are listening, and, we're helping them, just by talking, get to the place where, where they're going to be now, and having a better understanding of this. And a lot of people might have even came into this with not much understanding or not much introduction to this, but they're already kind of, this is a lot of this is at a high level, so it might take like a lot of rewatching and stuff, but it's at some level it helps them get to, a higher state. And then it's like, the cells in our body and everything is are helping us, like we're helping, Mother Earth and everything. So it's like we're all kind of this channel for one another. But it does come back to kind of allowing too, because there's also a lot of momentum that we've all created and that we are creating, that's getting us there, whether we try or not, and I think that's where the resisting and the allowing comes in, is that like we're already going there, and we just need to be, and just be ourselves, because that is what's taking us there. And the more we resist, it's like, do you want to go down the river like kicking and screaming, or do you want to go down the river like, enjoying it, because either way you're going to go down, and so it's like, or you're going to, but it really is like a paradox, because it's like, and I guess that's like exactly what you said. It's like, because the mind, when you can understand something, the mind tries to understand it, right? And so it's like, my mind is like, why, but what you're saying is you don't really need to know why, you just live from your heart. And I think that's like really what's best anyway, because like, would I rather be sitting here like wanting to, stress myself out over figuring out why, and feeling like I need to know, or I need to figure this out, or, and that's what leads to, because when you said earlier too, like, you were like, I hate this, but it's like, but that's the struggle, is that if you hate it, like where's the joy in that, and so it's like, if you're at your heart, then you could just be like, well, you know what, like this is happening, but like I'm living my purpose and I love it, and I feel like when you're in your heart, like it's very hard to, fully in your heart, it's very hard to feel that hate, because you're just kind of like settled in that place, and you like all the feelings of the joy and the peace, like it comes from that,
Yeah.
But let's go back to what you were talking about. So the connection got severed, right? And then what happened next?
Oh yeah, that's where we were. So the connection.
Well, no, these are great tangents, you know, because
Yeah.
it's like I love like you know, and that's the thing. And like I was mentioning before, it's like, you know, it always takes these like twists and turns, you know, but that's the fun of it. That's what I was saying. Like no two conversations are the same. We could have the same exact conversation that we're having right now tomorrow, like talk about the same exact things, and it will not be the same. It will go in completely different. You know, we'll be talking about something that we never imagined. You know.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So yeah, the connection got severed. Yeah, and also I was already thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to open some gates. Like I'm going to have to integrate this conversation the next days because it's going to, I'm
Yeah,
going to
people
have
have
it.
told me that they're like, man, your videos have like such high rewatch value. And I'm like, oh, that's great because, you know, I do need the watch time, you know, for this channel to grow. So, you know, so that's all good. Really, it's like that's actually a good, like, see, my brain is now, it's like, oh, how can I hack that? Should I talk about like the hardest stuff for people? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so it got severed, and then everything happened like for what usually happens when you fall asleep. You just like you forget that everything is a dream. Everything becomes very solid. You start to wonder who you are. You start to feel lost and, you know, kind of alone, and you know, all these patterns started coming. For sure, my connection with nature was very strong. So I was like, I was always connected to, you know, fairies and, you know, all kinds of. So this continued, but at a certain point, when I look back now, my God, man, when I was living in Amsterdam, I was living in the red light district. And then when I see my frequency there, I'm like, that must have been one of the periods where I was the most lost in life. So basically, I just went from the age of 6 or 7, just went to more and more lost, more and more lost, more and more lost, more and more lost, until I was about, yeah.
Yeah, you talk about living in with the light and the dark, and you know, it's like you definitely got to experience that whole gamut, you know.
Yeah, no, completely. I think until I was about, well, let's say it like this, it's like when I had these periods of feeling lost, they would be super dense and super, you know, I considered suicide and everything. I would be on top of a building jumping up. But I also luckily had moments where I was feeling that awakening or that awakefulness through my relationships with someone, or I would have a spiritual experience. But you know, it was very extreme. Like, or I would have like a spiritual experience and I wouldn't know how to integrate it because my life was not integrated, or I would be so lost that. So it was very, yeah. And then I think I got really, like, since I was around 30, I started to come back. So I just blindly, when I'm looking at it, yeah, from 6, 7, it just went down, 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 down the train. Oh my God. And then when I was around 30, it went like, okay, I'm starting to come out. Yeah. Extreme. Yeah, very. But when I compare my life to others, it wasn't that hard. But yeah, you know, I've had my hardships. I've had my challenges for sure.
So when did the temple come in? Was that when you started, when you were 30 and you were like, you know, is that
Yeah.
when you decided to,
When
what was the catalyst behind that? Like what was like like if you could go back to that moment that you were like, that moment when you were 30 or around the age of 30 when you were like, okay, like what was the catalyst, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, of course. I'm transparent. I am, you know, I'm not into like keeping things personal or whatever and anymore in that sense. So the catalyst was definitely I went to India at a certain point. I think I was around 26 or something, 24 maybe. And I did some meditations there just naturally, not like somebody was teaching me or something. And then when I came back to Amsterdam, it took me some time, but I really wanted to learn how to meditate. So then one of my best friends there, she said, there's a Zen dojo and they're teaching how to meditate, calm, you know, and stuff like that. So that my first entry into the dojo was like the whole space changed into a 5-dimensional space. It wasn't like just like this, like it was like I saw it was amazing actually. So when I entered, I knew like, okay, this is a lineage or a teaching or something that I know that I'm going to learn a lot from. And yeah, and I started the project there, and then started to do much more meditation, and really they really taught me how to meditate. And in a way, they didn't teach me anything, because you come in, and I remember that even when I was 17, one of my friends brought me into a Zen dojo for the very first time. I was maybe 16, 17, very young. And they don't explain anything. They have these black robes, you know, and they have this stick, and they're like super strict, you know. And I remember that I went in and I was like, okay, at least somebody's going to explain me how to meditate, you know. But nothing. You just sit there, watch a white wall, and that's it. So I remember I got so furious. I was like, who are these people? And what is this horrible energy? And, you know, so the first time in the Zen dojo, I was ready to break the whole thing, and all the people. I was so furious. But of course, in this time, I had no tools what to do with my strong emotions. But later, when I went into the Zen dojo, I remembered it, like, oh, but I've been sitting in a Zen dojo, but I was 17 and couldn't handle it. So then they started to slowly explain what was meditation. And that has, you know, driven me into that connecting deeper, always deeper, deeper, deeper with those teachings, so deeply that I gave my life to it. I was like, that's it. I don't see any use of doing anything else than just dedicating my life to enlightenment, or dedicating my life to freedom, in the sense of not only for me, but for all beings. So I really went very deeply in that. And also later, I remembered that when I was 6, 7 years old, my favorite game was to watch a white wall and think of nothing. So I was already doing it, but I didn't know what I was doing. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as like, you know, the thinking about nothing and the meditation is, you know, is the purpose behind that, you know, or at least for you at that time, you know, or even now, like, you know, just to clear your mind, just so you're more connected to source and God and all that. So you're not, you know, is that kind of the idea?
The idea is more like that you become empty. The idea is that you become empty from everything. So it's the idea is and in Zen, I have to say, because there's thousands of different streams of Buddhism, and Zen is, I would say, one of the most strict ones. They're very strict, which I needed it. I needed that discipline. I needed that strictness, because I came from a total drug taking, like complete lost soul, and you know, and I do what I want type of energy. And I needed to have a structure, and I needed to have that strictness. I needed literally to have a stick behind the door that said, if you don't sit at 7:30 in the morning, we come and look for you in your room. You know, so in that sense, it fitted my personality, because I have a very fiery personality. I'm an Aries, I'm a tiger. I'm impulsive. I have a lot of energy, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I'm super enthusiastic. And then the next day I'm like, boring. And then I start another project and I go there. So I really like, I was kind of all over the place. So I needed that kind of strict structure. So in the way that they bring out the teachings, it's super simple, because they don't really teach. They just say Zen is, or Zazen is, nose horizontal, or what is it, vertical, and shoulders horizontal. You know, it's just like little sentences like that, and you're like, okay, well, that's Zazen then. That's Zen then. What is the essence? So what they're trying to do is for you to experience the essence of the emptiness that is inherent of all things. It's basically saying that everything is empty. But I have to say that the Zen kind of, because later I started more like Tibetan Tantric Buddhism and everything, I missed that part in the Zen, because the Zen was, for me, was very much like, it became kind of empty, you know, kind of dead empty, you know, like everything became so empty that I let go of everything, you know, happily. I was living in that Zen temple with my husband, and we had a child, you know, I became a Zen nun, he's a Zen monk, he's a Zen master now. So the love of our family was what brought me through that temple life. And I think we must have been one of the very first people on this planet that were living in a Zen temple, following all the traditions, but as a family. So she's born, like my daughter has lived there for 10 years. She's born into that tradition. So that love kept me going. But at a certain point, I was like, this is okay, it's empty, but you know, so then I started looking for more, and then I understood, like, okay, it's not just empty. In that emptiness, it's filled with infinite potential. So it's kind of like you empty yourself from all identity. And when you become completely empty, that is when you tap into, that is when you become that source portal, that channel of infinite potential. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And a lot, you know, and you mentioned that it was through experience, you know, like experiencing the stillness, experiencing the emptiness, which I think is very interesting, you know, as far as like not just it being a thought process, but of just like the experience of it. So you were there for 10 years, and then what did you do next?
What did I do next? So then, yeah, I had to leave the temple because I couldn't, as I told you, I couldn't, like, basically my body got kind of sick. Like I would do my Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshops, and a lot of them, sometimes even 3 continents per month. So I would really like
You were already even into the heart, all the heart.
Yeah, I was quite fast. I did it in 2012, the very first one Drew Velo gave. So I already started that work, but not as a person, but more as a Zen nun. Like I saw it as my mission to, because when you become a nun or a monk or a bodhisattva first, you take those vows, you basically say, I will acquire all dharmas, meaning all wisdoms. I will acquire all wisdoms. You know, there's a few of these vows. So I saw it more as the basis is me being a Zen nun, and then as the nun, I will go and teach the Awakening the Illuminated Heart. So my basis was that. My basis was being a Buddhist, and it was interesting because I talked to Jumvalo about it as well, and he said, "Yeah, me at heart, I'm a Buddhist as well." Like, you know, so it's very interesting how, and by the way, now that I'm saying that, I don't really resonate with that anymore either. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not like that whole kind of dogmatic feeling or religious feeling, or it has to be from this lineage or this teacher or this. It's like I need to really I need to be a source portal, but I had to taste and to experience all these different lineages through all the past lifetimes that I've had, so that it's like as one now, as a union now. So now, for example, when I am source portal, like I was in the pyramids this year, or it was maybe last year already, and I was like being that source portal, I became so many gods and goddesses. It was amazing. I was like shape shifting, you know, like 1 minute I was, not even a minute, just for a few seconds I was Isis, you know, the Egyptian goddess, and then I was the Tibetan goddess, and then I was, you know, all these different, and that's when I started to understand, oh, okay, that's why I've done so many studies. Also because I thought they were interesting, but also because now I can really become that frequency. Not at will, because if I say, oh, now I'll be this goddess and now I'll be this, then it doesn't work, obviously. It's like, okay, my ego is there. But if I just open myself and I just bring out that frequency, then source can come through me and decide, okay, now you're Tara, and now you're Kuan Yin, and now you're Mary Magdalene, and now you're like, so I just kind of change fluidly into all these different energies. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, like doing the Awakening the Illuminated Heart and doing all kinds of work with all these traditions, also teaching it, the Mary Magdalene work, Egyptian Tantra work, Pleiadian Tantra, like all these different forms and shapes. And now I'm doing the Black Diamond Tantra. So I'm bringing all these together into one. So yeah, that's what happened after. That's the last 5 years, I would say, 4 or 5 years since I left.
So did the Zen, like the Buddhism that you went there, was that about the heart as well? Or did you kind of need to go outside of that to find more of the information about the heart?
Which one? Sorry, I don't understand the question.
So, because you were mentioning with the Zen Buddhism, it was a lot about clearing your mind and just being empty. But were they also teaching about the heart as well? Or did you have to go outside of the Buddhism to kind of, you know, were you kind of inspired to look outside of that for the heart? Like what made you kind of think about, oh, like I need to, it's not only just about being empty, but I actually need to look into living from the heart as well?
Yeah, it was a call from Jumvalo, because I was traveling a lot, and then in the year 2000, which means 22 years ago, I went up on the pyramids and the whole story, but I don't want to go into now. But someone in front of the Sphinx said to me, remember the word Merkaba, Merkaba. And I Googled it, and there was 0 on the Merkaba, like 0. There was nothing about it. And then I went through the Sinai, where I'm living now, and for 3 months, just traveling by myself. And then when I came back to Amsterdam, one of my best friends there said, you have to read this book. And it was with the beautiful flower of life on it in golden and everything. And the first page I opened, it was Merkaba. So in that sense, I'm linked to the Melchizedek teachings as well. So it's a kind of a trip if you're me, because all these different lineages are like in one body, right? In one lifetime. But when you really look at it, you're like, how is that possible? Like you did this, like how, so can you imagine? Of course I was confused.
Yeah, I mean, that's the path, is that like when you're on this track and you're on that exponential curve, like you mentioned, like you literally live, like, I mean, I feel like I've lived like multiple different lifetimes, like in this one life, all the stuff I've been through, like some people would have to live their entire life to just even go through like a few year chapter of my life. Which is pretty crazy, but yeah, I mean that, so you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I would love to hear more about your stories as well.
Oh yeah, we'll do more. We'll absolutely do more, and I'll go into mine and everything like that. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, like the big thing that got me on this track that I'm on now, was so just and a lot of my audience knows, but for anyone new, like, so I was actually one of the biggest YouTubers at one point in time back in 2011. I was one of the top 100 most subscribed YouTubers doing comedy music. And I mean, I was having a blast, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was almost like when I broke into being one of the top 100, like I had felt like I just got to the top of Mount Everest, because that's what I had been like working for the last 2 years. And then I got cancer basically that same quarter, like a couple months later, maybe this might even been like the same month or something. And it was like, you just got to the top and now an avalanche came and you're like, you don't know who to trust because you can't even trust your own body. And like, and then you're kind of like coming face to face with, like, what is my purpose? Like, what does this all mean? And it just like everything that wasn't like all the fame, the fortune, like I was being recognized like in public, people were coming up to me and being like, I love your videos, and taking pictures. And, it was almost getting to the point where every time I walked outside, like there would be somebody who would notice me, and so it was pretty surreal to have that experience, especially at such a young age. And, having really just more money coming in from YouTube and everything that I knew what to do with. But whenever I got cancer, like it was a very empty feeling. Like it was like, it's not, what's it really worth? Like, what is this really doing for me? And, and while I was having a lot of fun, and it was, it definitely was coming from a pure place, but at the same time, it wasn't like my path, and that was like almost like a violent shake awakening to get me on my path and be like, okay, well, that doesn't matter. Like, that's not what I want to do. And yeah, I mean, I was blessed to be in a situation where I created another couple, YouTube channels and digital brands that were bringing in income, because as my main channel, as I started producing less content on there, the money started going away. I created these other channels that really started to do really well and were able to kind of provide me the income I needed. So I didn't really have to work, while I just got to, explore what my purpose was and kind of go on this, journey to find myself, and that's when I had, and again, like, so that was, I mean, basically, the quicker version of it, is like, and so when I woke up, when I got cancer and like, I got very almost angry at God. I was like, why was I given this? Like, and I definitely believed in God, but I never had that like personal experience, and so like, and I'm kind of someone who almost like, needs to experience something in order to not necessarily believe it, but, to build that momentum. And so in 2013, I was like just really angry at just not really knowing what my purpose was, and, not really knowing, if there was a God, and all of this, and like that all led me to have this spiritual awakening, where I just started learning about who I was in a past life, and started seeing angels and spirit guides behind my friends, and communicating with them. And then I was like, okay, like I got the answer I needed, thank you. And it was like this like very familiar like feeling, like, okay, like like I get it. Yeah. Like I was like, it was like remembering in that moment, like that this was all part of exactly like what you said. Like it was like a remembering, like whenever you got the severed, and it's like, and you were angry, it's like that was my moment, where it was, but that realization was felt so familiar that it was like oh yeah, this was what this is all part of the path. And so yeah, like that pretty much got me to where I am now. Again, I kind of like dove into as much research as possible. And it's interesting too, because when I think back to that time and all of the information that I found right when I had that awakening was all like super spot on, because it's taken me about 10 years to really like grow into the person I am today, and to be learning, to learn like everything I needed to, because it was almost, and it was interesting because it was like when I first woke up, like I learned all the stuff that is like at the top of like where I'm at now. Like I learned about the Flower of Life. I read those books. I read the Living in the Heart. This was all the same, like in 2013. I found you, like look into your videos, like, and a bunch of other, and as well. And so I was already at the top, of like, again, like I was already where I am now back then, but the information was almost like too much for me to take in at that time, because I hadn't had the like the training to really be able to ground that, and to be able to understand how I can use that and what it really means for me.
Yeah.
And so after I learned that, I really had to start from square one and really like look into different, like starting with like mindset, and just like very like not necessarily surface level, but more of like like base level understandings of that you create your own reality. And then it was like getting into the law of attraction, and and then it was a gradual ease and step and momentum forward to basically get me to where I am today. But it is very interesting when I look back to that time, and like it's like, man, like I knew it all, like I know now, and I got everything I needed to back then. But only now am I at the time when I can really like make something of it, in a sense, for others. Like for me, it was a lot of like a learning of what it like this means for me. But and then but starting with the getting cancer, like I feel like that was also changing for my path, where like before it was more about me, and now it's more about others, because it's all about fulfillment. And like just doing things for myself, like it doesn't fulfill me. Like I could get the Lamborghini, I could have all the money in the world, I could live on the top of the mountain, or live on the beach, but it's not going to do it for me, and I've got to that point where it just, I know all that isn't fulfilling, it like, it will be nice for a few days maybe, but, and so, yeah, like that definitely got me on the path of just wanting to serve and wanting to help others, because I get excited and feel good when like, I do feel like I'm helping others, and it's interesting because when you say too, it's like, because you mentioned like, it's not even about, this was in the workshop, I think you said, like, you were like, it's not even necessarily about, because everyone is kind of, where they are. But it's interesting too, because I feel like I do get more fulfillment out of feeling like I'm helping others than necessarily helping myself. And I think that is probably part of the conduit, in a way, where like feeling like I'm serving a purpose, for other people is what really fulfills me. And hey, if I can have a happy life at at the same time, if I can enjoy my life, if I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, all the better, because I do love to travel, I do love to have experiences, like and that's a really cool part of my life too, is that like when I was in so I actually got invited to the White House with the work that I had done, and that was right before Obama left office. Invited a bunch of creators, I think it was like one of 70, to get invited to partake in these different activities that they had planned for us. And then the State Department saw my name on a list and reached out to me, and then flew me to Greece, flew me to Montenegro. I was speaking in front of big stages of people, just about the industry and growing your audience and all this. And, and they were putting me up, like, they were like, all expenses paid, flights, food, hotel, you name it. And I was like, I could get used to this, and so, that definitely, like, there's, hey, if I can help people, but I can also like travel the world and get to see different places, like, like Austin, Texas is cool. I love it, but at the same time, like, there's a big world out there and I've only seen 3% of it or 5% of it or something. So, so yeah, it's all about experiences, but I've had a really interesting career, I would say. And that's where I was mentioning, bringing it back, like, the things I've been through with the cancer, with the YouTube, with, other just, having these companies and working with all these different types of people, being in relationships. I was engaged, that didn't work out, for the better. We were definitely going different paths at some point, and towards the end. But like a lot of people, I feel like will, they could take 30, 40 years going, through the lessons that I was fortunate enough to be able to learn in a short period of time. And so that resonated with me with what you're saying, because I think that's part of just being on this path, is that you just like, you do go through things a lot quicker, Yeah. But let's get to the meat of this real quick. So as far as like, living from the heart, so we've got a lot into why. Is there anything that we haven't covered as to why, or anything that you like want to share about why somebody should live in their heart? Because you're the expert on this. I'm learning about this. While I have been introduced to this, 10 years ago, and I'm getting into it now, like, I'm looking to you as to, to share, your experience on this. And that's, I think, another thing of value as well, is kind of what we've been talking about, is like, there's no substitute for experience. Like you have really been putting this into practice for years. You've been experiencing this. And so, I'd love to hear just a little bit before we get into the how of like, like when you've really started to live from your heart. Because again, like and I say this a lot as well, is like, and thanks to you, is like, when you're in your mind, you're living from duality, right? But when you're in your heart, you're living from unity. You're living in that like place where there's really no negative repercussions of anything. And so that's like so big, but I have an understanding of that from my level, but I feel like also it's going to be good to hear, what you have to say on it, because a lot of people are just gonna be hearing this for the first time.
Yeah. So we'll make this the last question, because I'm starting, my energy level is starting to get tired. So I would say that living from the heart is the most important thing that we can do on our planet. And the reason why is not only because of the heart having a different access to reality than the brain, but also because from the heart we can actually create whatever we wish, much more than just from the brain. Like for sure from the brain we can create a lot. Hi, Chris. For sure from the brain we can create a lot. But if it's not linked to the heart in that sense, then we cannot connect, then we cannot really create reality in that sense. Because you know how there's all these like law of attraction and instant manifestation, and then you had this whole wave with The Secret and everything. But actually these methods of manifesting, or these methods of creation, are dangerous. Why? Because they are created mostly from the brain. So in that sense, the brain is a polarity instrument. It's an instrument of duality. So it cannot create only a non-harmful thing for yourself and the others. It will always create something that you want, but also something that harms you and it will hit you from the back, or something that will harm somebody else, because it's just the way it is. That's the brain. Like when you open the brain up, it's like 4 quadrants there, and it's always working like that. So it's, hi, Anne-Marie. I think it's nice. It's very sweet. I'm getting all these little hearts. Yeah. So So when you're in that space, from even when you do manifest these things, you're still manifesting something that is potentially harmful and actually will be harmful. There's no doubt about it. So it's, if even in a logical sense, you have to create from the heart. And you hear so many people like, the brain is so important, the brain is so important. In ancient Egypt, you know, when a people dies, they take all the organs out and they, you know, they keep the genitals, they keep the heart, and, you know, everything gets put into those, I have them here, those beautiful gray pots. But the brain, they consider it just junk. They throw it away, you know, and Drunvalo, he loves saying that story, and it's true. So in that sense, the brain, if it's not connected to the heart, the brain is just junk. It's just producing 84,000 thoughts a day. It's just like, this is why humanity is sick, basically, because it's obsessively thinking about itself. It's like me, I, my life, my, I don't know, my clothes, my house, my partner, my kids, maybe at the highest, but that's it, like my. So in that sense, we are collectively completely sick by a mind that is not connected to the heart. But when the heart and the mind are starting to connect, definitely at this moment, it becomes useful. So then that means living from the heart. Living from the heart doesn't mean, oh, we'll forget about the brain and that's it. No, we connect them together in a, you know, you can do that through the method that we're teaching, but also by just consciously making that connection, basically, like bringing your awareness down into your heart, which means like the heart is the one that chooses, the heart is the one that lives, the heart is the one that controls without controlling anything. The heart is the one that's leading and the brain is just following. The ego is just following, but mostly in our life, it's the other way around. It's the ego who's saying this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then we're going to convince the heart to do it because it's smarter, it's, I don't know, easier, or I don't know, you know, stuff like that. So that is the why. Like you have to create from your, or you have to be in your heart to be able to create life, to create your reality from your heart. There's no other way. You can't do it just from the brain.
Yeah, and then the how is literally just putting your awareness there. Is that right?
Yeah, the how is literally, I have actually a meditation on my YouTube channel. I think it's called the tiny space, or the sacred space in the tiny space of the heart. So this is like, for example, is a way how. It's like but you can do it like anytime, huh? Like, but it's more easy if the first time you just really bring yourself in the kind of a really meditative state, and then you move your center of awareness basically inside of your body. It doesn't matter from where you come, but it's more easy from your head, and then you move into your physical heart. This is what you need to do. You need to move into your physical heart, because that's where the sacred spaces of your heart are. It's and that's where all these torus fields are coming from, right? It's like the torus field of the heart, the toroidal fields, the electromagnetic fields of your body, all linked to your heart space, not to your mind. So in that sense, how do you do it? You bring your awareness into your heart. You can also do it without going into your physical heart. If you just bring your awareness and you can just put your hands on your heart and just feel that energy of your heart, like and you just listen to that, or you feel that, or you just really, and you become very aware of that space, then you're already living from the heart, right? Then you're already out of your head. It's not like you're not trying to figure out what to do for tomorrow, what happened yesterday or whatever. You're just breathing and you're just being, you know, in your heart. So in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a depth to it as well. And that's why you teach the workshops and everything. So people want to find you if they want to go deeper into this, which I highly recommend. I did the workshop. It's great. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So if you guys, want to go more into this, you should definitely, do this workshop. And I know you do a bunch of other stuff too, but you want to talk a little bit just about really quickly about where they can find you if they want to go deeper.
Sure, they can find me on my website. It's called Tantra of the Heart. So, of course, a lot of people, when you say Tantra, they think it's, I don't know, you have to take off your clothes, or I don't know what. It has nothing to do with that. The Tantra means that you're connecting your brain to your heart. So it really is so that's the website, tantraoftheheart.com. And they can find any information there about what I do, like my workshops, private sessions, everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'll link all that down below to make it really easy.
Cool.
And yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, anything like that, you can text me at 512-548-3066. US and Canada. I also have a Telegram group. I got a Patreon that you can go support the show, and a website. It's all at Alex Negrete, ALEXNEGRETE, all linked down below. And HiRa, thank you so much. This means so much. We should definitely do more of these, at some point. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's been really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.
How do I stop my life?